Good morning. Did you have fun at the Watershed Festival yesterday? Oh my gosh, it was wonderful. It was so wonderful. They had over 180 booths this year, and it was just an amazing thing. And we were right in front of City Hall. And by the end of the day, everything we had was gone. It was really marvelous. So congratulations for going and sharing in that wonderful event. So how old are you? What do you think? 23. My email address is revmary49@gmail.com. I'm sticking with that because it's 49, healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's my mantra. I wanted to start out with a quote from Khalil Gibran from the Prophet. The timeless in you is aware of life's timelessness and knows that yesterday is but today's memory, and tomorrow is today's dream. And that which sings and contemplates in you is still dwelling within the bounds of that first moment which scattered the stars into space. Great visualization, scattered the stars into space. And today the universe continues to expand. Ernest Holmes wrote, "In truth, there is no beginning or end, for there was never a commencement of life in the eternal, and there will never be an ending. Age is a human's measure of a period of experience." On page 180 in the Science of Mind text, which is the textbook we study in our classes, Holmes tells us there can never come a time when we shall stop progressing. Age is an illusion. Limitation is a mistake, and unhappiness is ignorance. Why is that? Because the life we humanly experience in each moment is the life of God. Each Sunday, one of the ministers in our organization has picked a title and written up some ideas of what you could say. So when I read that about how old are you, I thought, what they wanted me to do is encourage you to be all, do all these things. And my experience this week did not lend it to that. So I have to share from my heart. This week I was invited by a friend to visit her husband in the hospital, and he's been in there for a while and he's on life support. And I was glad to do that. I love visiting people in hospitals or wherever they are. And I was glad to do a positively peaceful prayer, I thought in my mind. But when I arrived, my friend told her husband, "I asked Reverend Mary to come here and tell you what it feels like when you die. And what happens after that?" So I took a deep breath, refocused my energy, and talked to them. It was beautiful. And when I got to leave, they were both smiling. And I turned to go, and he lifted his arm and waved at me because he couldn't speak. It was one of the sweetest things I've felt in a long time. So I wanted to share more about this with you today, and I decided to use 3 sources: our Science of Mind textbook by Dr. Ernest Holmes, and an essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson called The Oversoul. And then, if you've ever heard of James Van Praagh, he's a medium, and he has this unique talent of being able to communicate with those who have passed over. He's written many books about all his experiences, and it's absolutely fascinating. And here's one of the quotes from his book. "We're not here to be enslaved by the tenets of a society that dwells on the lower or negative aspects of Earth's personality. If we've been dwelling on guilt, fear, or worry, the time has come to reacquaint ourselves with the meaning of God and to envision ourselves as the truth that we are spiritual beings of light and love." From the hundreds and hundreds of experiences he's had with those that have passed over, that's the truth. And he continued, "We are and always will be a spark of the divine. When every day we see the world with spirit in mind and live a life of truth, Our soul gives our body its life. When our spirit self is empowered, we experience a more fullness of life. And to focus on our awareness of spirit means we have to be in the present moment. And he related it like driving a car. You are totally aware, you are focused, you're in control. That's the present moment. Because whatever we focus on, we give it energy. And we know where our energy goes, creation flows. Because the outside world, our experience in this life, is what we have created from within. You know, I wish spiritual enlightenment was easy. I wish I could just draw you a big spreadsheet and all the dimensions that are out there in the world, you know, and I'd hand it out to you every Sunday. And it wouldn't work. Because our soul, us, each one of us, comes to that point on its own. We can't force a soul to do anything, but we can nurture it. We can help it grow. We can help it along till finally it's ready to blossom. And only we know when that is. We may not know when it is, but we know when we experience it. So from von Prague's experiences in dealing with people who passed over, he said we must take responsibility for every aspect of our life because we're the only ones that can change our life. It's important to reawaken and reconnect to the essence of our soul. Exercise our spiritual muscles through spiritual practices. Have you ever heard that before? If you haven't been coming a long time. It's our mantra, do your spiritual practices. In the Science of Mind text, I love the chapter on what the mystics have taught. It brings together information from many of the mystics who lived over time. And mystics are those who intuitively knew the truth, they experienced the truth, they felt the truth, and they arrived at the spiritual realization that God is all there is, and we're all one with God, just like we often say here. But the great religions of the world started with people who had that experience. They had this realization. Jesus, Buddha, Socrates, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, many of those mystics. But it includes poets. If you've ever read a poet that just lifted you, like Browning, Tennyson, Homer, Walt Whitman. Their poetry feels immortal because they have a spiritual sense of life. And that's why it speaks to that part of us. They sensed this atmosphere of God. And Holmes talks about the cobbler, Jacob Boehme, who he was working on his shoes, and he looked up and he saw the cosmos in a geranium plant in his window, and his life was changed. Just that quick. There are three sides of this going on in each one of us. We discover unity with the whole in our body and our physical world. We're one with the creative law in that we have a mental world that is creative. And we're one with the Spirit of God in our conscious world. If you have time, go look at this cherry tree behind the sanctuary. It will blow your mind. It is just in full bloom. It is so gorgeous. A couple years I stood by that tree and I said, "Why are you so beautiful?" And I heard, "Because the bees come to me for nectar." I thought, that's beautiful. Now, it's probably my subconscious mind that kicked that out, but it doesn't matter. It was a beautiful answer to a question on how a cherry tree could be so incredibly beautiful. You know, learning this philosophy is a lifelong experience. We know we're spiritual beings, and we know we're here for a reason, and we can know it, and sometimes, like the cherry tree, we can feel it, and that's all we can know. It's a lifelong experience. So if you haven't taken a class lately, I encourage you to do so. Re-experience, delve into who you are as a spiritual being. I can look back on my life and see that I followed some spiritual breadcrumbs through my life. I was raised strict Catholic, and at one point as a teenager, I started dating the Lutheran boy across the street. My parents weren't happy, but heck, I'm a teenager, I know it all. And he asked me a lot of questions, and it wasn't long before I was buying books on different religious traditions, and I was like, wow, I had no idea. So I started leaving these books laying around the house. That didn't go over too well anyway, either. But when I was 19, I married this guy, and we got married in a Lutheran church, so none of my family could come, because at that time it was a mortal sin to enter any church that was not Catholic. But they all came to the reception, so it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. My grandma always said, can't understand how youngsters can have so much fun on orange juice, not realizing there was vodka in it. One of those things you just don't tell. You don't tell grandma that. But anyway, I didn't even have an inkling to look at spirituality for 21 years. That's when I divorced my husband and moved to Redding. And that whole story is another fun experience, how I found this center. But a couple years after I moved here, I built a house up in Country Heights. I was really excited about it because I didn't even know what color I liked. I had to pick out all these things, and it was pretty challenging. But one morning, I'm sitting on the bed, and I'm putting on my shoes, and I'm lacing them up, and in walks my Aunt Pat. And she's walking in through my house, and she's going, oh, that's nice. Look at that. Aunt Pat was dead 8 years. And I was shocked. And I just looked at her. Now, we know that spirit vibrates at a higher level, so to her, I wasn't moving much. But I saw her walk around and make these comments, and I'm like, oh my God. So I came and talked to Dr. James at the time, and he said, yeah, it happens all the time. Not to me. But it was interesting because I shared Aunt Pat's expressions with my mom, her sister. And my mom said, yep, that's Pat, all right. I'm like, wow, that was amazing. So a few years later, when my mother died, my brother and I were with her. And a few hours later, it was just like this tsunami wave. It just, whoo, right over me. And I could hear my grandmother laughing. And I could see my mother and Aunt Pat dancing. And I have been happy ever since, knowing the three of them are together. It really gave me a sense of peace, let's say that. So at some point after that, I met my soulmate and husband, Paul. And a friend took me to a psychic. I don't know why. She said, let's just go for fun. I'd never been to a psychic. And all she asked me was my birth date, not my name or anything. And then she said, this relationship you're in is the most important one in your whole life. And I told her I thought it was important because I'm trying to understand it. And she said, no. Honor it. Don't understand it. She said, it's an old relationship. Long time ago, you worked out the early basics of relationship. But now, you're here to go even deeper. Personal growth will come for both of you if you do it together. I had no idea a few years later, Paul and I would be taking ministerial training together, where you're fully out there with each other and learning about each other. I told the psychic, I've just been wanting to organize this. And she said, of course that's impossible. It's just going to flow. It's going to be what it needs to be. So the most important thing I can share with you this morning is there's much more going on than you know. Much more. Many of you have probably had experiences like I have, but know if you haven't, there's much more going on. So back to my friend and her husband in the hospital. I shared with him what the Buddhists say, that dying is like taking off a tight shoe. It's just relaxing, peaceful, a sense of relief, a sense of, oh, I see. There's more to this than I thought. And I said to him, because his wife said he was very afraid, what often happens is we see people we love when we take that step. And I know he loved his mother and father dearly, and they had both passed. And I said, this deep love that you have is likely to call them to you at that time to be with you. And I know he was a Vietnam veteran and cherished that because so many of his friends had died. And I said, and your Vietnam buds, I bet as you're thinking of them and loving them, they'll be there too to welcome you. It was beautiful. So back to Van Praagh. One of the stories I wanted to share with you, he has these sessions where people can come in and talk with him and see if they can contact loved ones. And a friend of his brought this gentleman in. His name is Andrew. And Andrew wanted to see if he could contact his grandmother. And Van Praagh goes into this meditative state for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And he said, I'm not picking up any vibrations from your grandmother. But do you know anything about Chicago? Andrew said, yeah, I was born there and I lived there when I was young. And Van Praagh said, I'm getting an impression of a school in Chicago of a young boy, and the boy's name is Ziggy. And Andrew said, oh yeah, when I was in early grades, my friend, I called him Ziggs because I love this David Bowie album, but Ziggy, yeah, it was Ziggy. And they hung out together as kids, and Andrew said, and there was another kid, I don't remember who it was. And Van Praagh said, how about Weiland? He goes, yeah, how did you know? How did you know it was Weiland? Van Praagh said, because he's standing here with you. And another person standing here with you. A person who knew you and Ziggs and Weiland. He meditated some more. He said, this man is telling me he's a guardian angel for you. And he's concerned about your welfare. And he's showing me his hands because they're calloused. And his name is Shorty. And he's showing me some smoke like a fire. Well, Andrew shrieked and cried and went into this moaning, for 5 minutes of just total shock. And he said, Shorty was the janitor in my school. And one day there was this explosion in the boiler room. And Ziggs and Weiland and I were in the basement, and we were caught, and we were screaming, and there was fire. And through the smoke came Shorty, and he saved us. I owe him everything. Van Praagh relayed that Shorty says he watches over you. And do you know a place called Springfield? Andrew said, yeah, I was in prison there for selling drugs. He said, Shorty came here tonight because you're on drugs again and you need to stop right now and you are in control of your life. Wow. Andrew got it. 5 years later, Van Praagh heard that Andrew was giving lectures to Narcotics Anonymous groups helping to save lives. So last night, Paul and I were talking about this, and I'm like, whoa, I don't know if people are going to get freaked out or whatever, but could it be true? I don't know. But eternity is a long time, and wouldn't it be fun that you don't have to come back here, but you can be a guardian angel for someone else? Wouldn't that just be cool? But if I put that in my mind, guess what's going to happen? It all begins in here with us. In 1841, Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote the essay, The Oversoul. And he says, we tend to see the world piece by piece. We see the sun, we see the moon, we see animals, we see a tree, and all of it together is the soul of the universe. He wrote, man is a stream whose source is hidden. The soul, whose organs we are, should it appear, would make our knees bend. The soul looks steadily forward, creating a world always before us, leaving worlds always behind us. The soul knows only the soul, and all else is idle weeds for wearing. I like that. All else is idle weeds. The soul's communication of truth is the highest event in nature. It gives itself and passes into and becomes the person in whom it enlightens, and that is you. So again, we realize we're just as old as we think. And no matter how many years we've been on this planet already, we've made it what it is, and we can now make it what we want to be. If there's anything in your life that isn't suiting you at this moment, you are in control. So then I found this really cute thing that Ernest Holmes wrote. He says, when I get up every morning, I enthusiastically thrill to what unfolds by me by means of God. My meditation and morning practice hit a high note, sets the tone for my day, and my spiritual mind declares it, my soul authorizes it, my body gets the message, and I am totally enlivened, ready to greet the day. Wow, I thought, I got some work to do to wake up and feel like that in the morning. In the Science of Mind text, page 239, it says, life cannot grow old. Listen to that. God in us, through us, as us, can only express perfection by how we create it. So today is another one of those new days. And as you leave here, I invite you to open your eyes, open your mind, and open your heart to discover, grow, learn, and serve in whatever comes to you. Because every moment is a possible step to grow closer to God. Every moment is an ability to comprehend your own personal divinity, which is timeless and ageless for eternity. And that's the way it is. So let's pray about our knowing of that. Because the truth is, as we always say it, there's only one thing going on here, and that is the essence of God's Spirit, universal intelligence, expressing itself in millions of ways, billions of ways. Each one of us is an integral part of that, and life would not be the same were you not here, were you not on this planet at this time. Because you contribute every day to the growth of humanity, to the knowledge and the intelligence of humanity by your presence. Just knowing this gives me so much food for thought about what I did yesterday, what I will do today, and what I will do tomorrow. So I accept for myself and everyone here that as we implant that knowledge in our heart and in our minds and in our body, we feel the presence of God. We feel that essence that has created all. And so it brings peace. It brings comfort. It brings love of our own self. And we give great thanks for that knowledge because it's the truth. And so it is. Thank you.